Hey, what is up, everyone? Chris Manning here from the Locked On Cavs podcast. That's my co-host, Evan Dammarell. On today's show, we're taking stock of the Cavs after the trade deadline, which is now come and gone. Obviously, the Cavs have a big weekend of games coming up as well against Indiana and against the 76ers, both on the road. The Philly one of particular interest after some deadline day moves. That is all coming up today on a very fun episode.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Before we get any deeper into today's show, we want to thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. Remember, we are free and available on all platforms. That includes YouTube, where we are over 1,000 subscribers, and we want to keep that number growing, so do us a solid and help us by subscribing today. Evan, the trade deadline has come and gone. James Harden is a 76er. Ben Simmons is a Brooklyn Net. The Cavs did not make any moves on deadline day itself, but obviously did get Karis LeVert. The Bucks went and got Serge Ibaka. The Heat traded KZ Opala for a second-round pick. The Raptors went and got Thad Young.
Chris, none of that matters because Darius Garland is on Team LeBron.
Okay, so if Darius Garland got drafted by his Clutch teammate, congratulations to Clutch for their vibes.
It's a recruiting pitch to bring King Big James back to Cleveland next year.
Darius and Evan Mobley are doing it himself, but Montrezl Harrell is going to Charlotte. Like a lot of teams, and the Boston Celtics got traded away Dennis Schroeder, but brought in Derek White, brought in Daniel Tice. So a lot of moves, Evan, amid the Eastern Conference right now, and the Cavs obviously one of them. Didn't make the headline move of the week, obviously, but this top 10 of the East, that is all pretty tightly packed for the most part. Obviously, the Cavs now in fourth, only one game back of the first place Miami Heat. Philly, who they play on Saturday, 2.5 back in the 5 slot, all extends all the way down to Atlanta, who's at 8.5 back. But you would think now is probably going to extend over Washington, extend over New York, extend over Indiana, and we have this firm 10 now. But the Cavs having a pretty good advantage with an easy schedule the rest of the way and everything to avoid the play-in tournament, which would be a big deal. I want to ask you this.
They still have to play Philadelphia 3 times this year.
Just a lot of James Harden, a lot of Joel Embiid. That for viewing pleasure for me, that's a win for me. But in terms of like the stakes of it, all of it, whatever. Yeah. Evan, I want to frame it this way: the Cavs now, we're going to get into the home stretch here. We're over 50 games. We're deep into the thick of the third here. Where do you view them as among the teams that we see now in the East? We have, again, these 10 teams that really look like playoff teams. I think all of them are good to varying degrees. We will see what Philly is, obviously. We will see what Brooklyn is. We'll see if vaccine mandates change for the Nets and Kyrie and everything. But where do you think the Cavs right now, if you had to guess, fall into the hierarchy of these after the moves we saw on trade deadline day?
I think they are in that 3, 4, 5 range, with Philly and Brooklyn jostling for 1 and 2, Chicago, Cleveland, and Milwaukee jostling for 3, 4, and 5. Like, the Bulls didn't make any moves at the deadline that were noteworthy. I think they're just trying to get healthy and get right with the All-Star break looming. Like you mentioned, Milwaukee added Serge Ibaka, which I really like that move altogether. Like, it's a shame the Cavs couldn't go get Dante DiVincenzo, but Sacramento finally got him. So congratulations to them. But I mean, obviously the real blockbuster here, other than Kristaps Porzingis going to Washington, which is not really a blockbuster that'll impact the Cavs, but just in terms of blockbuster trades, was the Harden-Durant swap, Harden-Simmons swap, goodness gracious, where you can arguably say both teams benefited from this trade. Like you said, a lot depends on Brooklyn. It depends if Kyrie Irving is available and vaccine mandates and whatnot, or if he just gets the shot in general. It depends when Ben Simmons returns to the court, because Rich Paul told Adrian Wojnarowski that he is still working his way mentally to get back on the court, and whether or not Kevin Durant's healthy. So on paper, this Nets team's lethal. And we had a listener / a follower mentioned to me that they still have Joe Harris, who is obviously a little banged up, but if he's healthy, but if you roll out a lineup of Kyrie Irving, Seth Curry, Joe Harris, Kevin Durant, and Ben Simmons, like, that's going to boat race most teams in the half court or even in fast break scenarios too, because that's just so much shooting that you're surrounding Ben Simmons with. And it's like the ideal team for Ben Simmons to go to. And again, I think a lot of people are going to crystallize Ben Simmons for what happened in the playoffs last year, but you can't let that speak for the full volume of what that player is. He's going to be really good for Brooklyn, and I'm excited to watch him play for the Nets. And then when you look at the Philly side of things, James Harden's hamstring's okay. You don't know if he was milking it at all, or if the Nets were intentionally resting him, which I think they were, just the deadline looming, obviously. But the 1-2 punch of Embiid and Harden is really good. They still kept Tyrese Maxey, which is huge for Philly. They still have Matisse Thybulle, which is still really good too. They had to gut a few pieces, obviously, but I mean, they had to lose the big penguin himself, former Cavalier Andre Drummond, which is always a tough loss no matter what team you are. But I think it's those two that are to kind of be the front runners to the East title now. Milwaukee is just, they have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's arguably the best player in the league. They're going to be in the thick of it, but I think Cleveland's going to be jockeying with those guys. I agree. They're going to be out of the play-in tournament picture at this point. It's going to be like between Charlotte and then New York and then maybe a few other teams as well. Like Washington's going to bottom out. They're going to get a really nice pick this year. Indiana's going to bottom out. They're going to get a pretty good pick this year. Charlotte tried to make not a power play, but they try to get a little better. New York didn't do anything, but they're still going to be there in the thick of things. Obviously, Miami, forgot about them too. Miami should be up in the upper echelon too. So maybe bump Cleveland down like that 4 or 5 range, and Miami should maybe be in the top 3 as well. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be hot, and I'm excited to see how it goes. Like, it's going to be some meaningful basketball. I know we're hitting the home stretch, but like the next 30 odd games or so have meaning, which is kind of fun to think about for the Cavs.
Yeah, I mean, it's very fun. We were not in this position, thinking about what the team was going to be, all that stuff. But what I think is, to me, the difference is I think that we're going to see a position where the Cavs' place in the standings, I think, may not necessarily like where I think that the playoffs will go, right? Like this team has a pretty schedule the rest of the way. They could very reasonably win 50 games, which is absolutely wild. I think like there's a chance they end up as like the 2 or the 3 if things just kind of break their way. Chicago obviously has some injury concerns that they're still kind of dealing with right now that could give Cleveland an opening as they theoretically get healthier and acclimate LeVert and things. I think if I was going to put them in a tier, I think there are 2. I think the best 2 teams in the East right now, if I had to bet today on like who I kind of trust the most in the playoffs right now, and looking at a more big picture is more so than where they'll fall in the standings. I think it's Milwaukee and Miami. I think then Brooklyn and Philly are these like wild cards of like, okay, they could make this a really tight to big 4 at the top if everything breaks correctly for these teams. If Harden is really good right away, if Simmons plays and is really impactful, if everything just kind of goes these teams, they could make that a little bit tougher. I think the Cavs are in that next group right there, is like potentially like in that behind those top 2 that I outlined. And then I think a little bit below. But the thing is that, Evan, that I think that the Cavs are also in a spot where like they could prove some of this, right? Like they could prove that they're better than they are now. Like I just need to see some of it and see how they operate in a playoff situation, how they operate, when they have to, when they make in-series adjustments. There's just like going to be some learning stuff that we don't know about this Cavs team. And I also think they're going to, regardless of where this is going, I think we're going to get like a really, really interesting first round matchup. Like if the season ended today, it'd be Cavs 76ers round 1. That is that is like a bloodbath. You know what I mean? Like that is.
I selfishly don't want that. I really
Why?
want Brooklyn Philly first round.
Well, yeah,
just
yeah.
for the petty in
That,
me.
I want that, but like I like there's not really any matchup you can tell me Cleveland could get that I think would be boring. And maybe after the break, let's take a break. Actually, we'll talk about some of that some more after the break. You're going to tell everyone about our friends at Bet Online, and then we'll come back and talk about some of the potential things we could see in the East the rest of the way.
Yeah, sure thing. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. As football it's the Super Bowl, baby, and it's here. BetOnline.com remains the number 1 spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live, real-time updates of current games. Do not wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, so let's get into some potential playoff matchups. Evan, in terms of like what you'd want to see with some of this, in terms of how we would want to see this all match up? I mean, is there like a particular matchup that intrigues you here as we kind of outline what the Cavs might be, as we outline, what these teams could kind of grow into? Like, are there certain matchups that appeal to you for whatever reason?
I would like to see I think Cavs Raptors would be fun if Cleveland like jumped up to 3 and they ended up playing Toronto because Toronto is the 6th seed right now. I mean, they're only a half game back of Milwaukee, but they're tied with Chicago. But I think due to tiebreakers, they're behind the Bulls right now. But either way, I think Cleveland Toronto would be fun because I'd love to watch a 7-game series between Scotty Barnes and Evan Mobley. I think that'll just be really fun. And like they're two young up and coming teams. Theoretically speaking, the Raptors have a lot more younger pieces than the Cavs do that kind of have some proven playoff experience, but that'd be enjoyable. I think Cavs Bucks would be fun too if there's like a lot of jockeying as well. I want to avoid Philadelphia. That's the other thing I was going to say if I were Cleveland, because Joel Embiid kind of owns Jared Allen in terms of like one-on-one matchups, and I don't really want to watch the Cavs get absolutely shredded in the first round. Because if I had to pick a ceiling for this team, I think they're a second round exit at their apex. Maybe the East Finals, maybe they are this year's Hawks instead of this year's Knicks, and they sneak into the East Conference Finals. I don't think they have what it takes to win a championship. If they got there, God willing, it'd be
They would be,
to watch that
yeah,
unfold, but
yeah.
yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at. Like, I wouldn't mind them playing Philly, but like I said, Embiid kind of owns Jared Allen. I want to see how Saturday's game goes. Obviously, when Philly has James Harden fully incorporated, maybe they figure out what's going on with them after the buyout market and stuff kind of settles too. We'll kind of get a clearer picture of that as well. But like Toronto would be fun just because of like you're watching two young teams. You're watching Mobley and Barnes go at it, which I think could be a fun budding rivalry in the Eastern
and how
Conference.
Toronto just like plays small. Like you'd have
Yeah,
this Cavs
like
size
the
against.
antithesis of the Cavs.
Yeah, the Cavs are like the Raptors are like, we're gonna play 6'9" dudes at all positions and plus Van Vliet, and like the Cavs are like, how about we just play 3 7-footers? Like that could be cool. I think if I was gonna like outline like I think among those teams in like that 7 to 10 range, let's say the Cavs could get up to 2, I think the one that would be the most fun to me, just based on how their roster looks right now, is Boston. That team is playing really really well. They have interesting size. I think that
I
could just be
really
fun.
like them getting Derek White. Like
Oh,
I thought that was
incredible trade.
such a smart trade. Derek White
Yeah.
is criminally underrated and pairs really nicely next to either of you. Like you could bump Tatum to the 4, and then you play Smart at the 2 and Brown at the 3, and you bump White into the starting lineup, or you have White just be like a supercharged 6-man. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's a great move for them.
You're closing with Time Lord, who's been awesome, and all that stuff is really fun. Like again, like Atlanta would be fun. Like there's a ton
Mhm.
of great matchups here. Evan, I think the other thing we should talk about is the fact that the Cavs didn't make any moves aside from Karis LeVert. They
I
get
was gonna
Karis
say.
LeVert, they make their big move. Schroeder ends up being someone that gets sent to Houston in the Daniel Tice trade. He'll probably be a buyout guy, one would think. You look at, Tristan Thompson theoretically could be a buyout guy. Gary Harris could be a buyout guy. DeAndre Bembry is going to be a buyout guy. Like there are names out there. Not the Cavs aren't going to be played for all of these names. Some of them are going to go to some of these teams that already have roster spots that are more ready-made contenders that are in different positions, right? But I think I still maintain, and we talked about this on our Thursday show, that I do think the Cavs didn't need to make another move for this deadline to be successful, right? Like I think this team is still better and still in a really good spot. And I think going forward, this is this is not going to be a team that is about, I think, like who else they can add here necessarily. It's going to be about the growth of Evan Mobley. It is going to be about the growth of Darius Garland. It is going to be about, what happens with LeVert and how they kind of replace some of their, as Kevin Love gets older and things like that. Like you're going to have to make some adjustments and change out the roster. But the future of this team is really about Mobley and Garland and Jared Allen.
Mhm.
And like I think this team's still in like a really good spot for this year in terms of how those guys grow. LeVert is going to support them, I think, in an interesting way. And if they could get, like, if they could find, like, I think if I'm looking at the buyout guys, we talked about this, but I think Gary Harris would be like, the more I've thought about it, is the one
It
that
makes
if you
a
could
lot of
get
sense.
him, if you could get him and you keep him away from Philly, you keep him away from not only do you bring him in and give you a defender and a shooter that you kind of need, but if you keep him away from a team that could use him, like
Philly and Milwaukee
yeah,
especially.
yeah, like that's a win for you. And again, like it's we'll see how this ends up. We'll see what the biomarket really ends up looking like. I mean, I don't think we know exactly how robust it's going to be. And historically, buyout guys are not coming in and like changing the playoff picture in a meaningful way. Like I think like the one I think about a lot is that example is like, you remember when uh Joe Johnson became a buyout guy and we were all like, oh, like, he went to Miami and or wherever he went and it was like, oh, it's going to change it speaks to the fact that I can't remember
Well,
where Simon's.
he was gonna come to the Cavs. Everybody thought that he had to go to the Heat instead.
Well, then he didn't when he like there was like, oh, he didn't want to come to Cleveland, didn't want to be in the market, whatever, even though LeBron's here. That didn't like change the playoff picture. What wins you series, what wins you games, what gets you to a place is you need the talent to get there in the first place, and then that takes you over the top. You may have some of these side guys make big plays when you need them to. The real thing is like they will just provide you depth, and I think Harris would be a guy that just would help with that, and also fill a need in a weird way.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't totally shock
As an
me.
aside,
Yeah,
I noticed people were kind of upset that with Karis LeVert now in the fold, that Lamar Stevens' minutes more or less have evaporated. That's an okay thing. Like if Dean Wade or Lamar Stevens lose their minutes in this rotation, especially with Lowry Marketing coming back to you because you're making clear talent upgrades, that's just a byproduct of team success too. If this Cavs team sucked, you'd be seeing a lot more minutes from Lamar Stevens and Lowry Marketed, and probably not Kevin Pangos, but maybe like RJ and M. Harden, Dylan Windler. But you're making moves now to bolster your roster and make a playoff push.
Well, yeah, I think when you get to a place where your roster is in a better spot, where your top 8, top 9, top 10 guys, like you obviously maybe don't want to have like every single there's a certain level like where you can have too much depth, like the competitiveness gets weird and it can create some bad vibes. But if you can have guys that are
The
capable of stepping up,
2017-18 Cleveland Cavaliers.
well, it's like if you just look at like this team where it's like if Lamar Stevens is your break glass in case of emergency guy, if Dean Wade can be your break glass in case of emergency guy, when you like if Markkinen gets hurt, if Okoro gets hurt, whatever, like that is a good place to be in, I think, if you're the Cavs, if you're trying to kind of manage your roster going forward. And like I think if we look at this deadline and we will look back at it, my guess will be that we will say, okay, yes, they didn't make a bunch of moves and reinforce the roster. They didn't do like multiple things to kind of reinforce the top of the roster. What they did do is they went out and addressed the big need and they move forward with that. And I think that's like a very reasonable place for them to go from here. Like I don't really have like any notes as far as like they did something weird. Like I don't come away confused. I come away like with this is a very clear vision for what they're trying to do here. And I think it makes, again, I think with everything else that has happened in the East, with the Cavs making a move, maybe not like as big, it's obviously not as big as getting James Harden. It is not as big as getting or trading James Harden for Ben Simmons, right? This is a spot where I think they should feel still pretty good about the business they did, feel good about their team. And like I just can't wait to watch all these these teams just like try to beat the crap out of each other for next like 6 months and like in the next season. Cause this like these 10 like this is just so these 10 teams in the East to me, like this top 10 right now, and like maybe one of these other teams will get in there next year and make this like an 11 and make it really competitive. I think all these teams have their own merits and are good in their own ways, and I just want to see them all duke it out. That's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, no, it really is fascinating. I think it's fun to again have to care about what moves other quote unquote contenders are, just playoff teams at this point. Just call them playoff teams because nothing's for certain. Like no one saw the Hawks making the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Anything can happen once the playoffs start because it's a completely different beast in the regular season. But I agree. I'm excited to see where the Eastern Conference goes from here and how they grow. I'm interested to see like what the hell is Washington going to do? Brad Beal probably will sign for more money than God, but what if he actually gets fed up and wants out of Washington? Like, what do the Wizards do? Like, they could pivot and become like a very interesting team next year, and they could kind of be in the thick of it. The Pacers could be interesting too because I think Tyrese Halliburton is really freaking good, and I think the pairing of him and Brogdon with Miles Turner could be really good too. But there's a lot of interesting moves that some of these like teams that are trying to bottom out are going to make possibly. But like you said, this Cavs team, I have to say again, like no one expected this from them. This isn't a self-insert monologue where I'll say the word I 20 times. I'll admit I was wrong on them. I think a lot of people would say that. That's the fun of this season now is we get to watch what the Cavs do next and how they evolve. I want to see what the growth is internally. Yes, I want to see them maybe add like a piece or two. If that costs you Kevin Pangos or Ed Davis along the way, that might be worth it. But at the same time, culture is an aspect the Cavs value greatly. But I'm interested to see kind of what moves they make. They have until March 1st to add players they want them to play in the playoffs. But more so want to see what this internal growth and what the trajectory is next, because the Cavs are in a really good place like right now, which I would not have believed if you told me this time last year, because they were looking very dull this time last year. So
This time last year, Evan, we were wondering about draft odds. I was starting to schedule in time to watch Oklahoma State and USC and watch G League
same, we're
connections.
doing like tankathons every now and then. We were wondering when Andre Drummond was going to get bought out. Andre Drummond was like bought out like almost instantaneously after the deadline, but
Yeah,
ding dong, that witch is dead. But
we've come a long
it's
way.
interesting.
Yeah,
We've
it's
come a
this.
long way.
Yeah,
It's been fun. I know people get on us sometimes for being overwhelmingly negative about this team sometimes, but like it's fun. I love this team
yeah.
dearly. They're my favorite team in the
Here,
world.
Evan. Here's also just the thing I will say, and I just want to. This is mostly to you, but everyone listening and watching. The straw people on Twitter are just
It's not Twitter, it's YouTube comments, it's our reviews on Apple Podcasts.
this is.
What people say on Reddit about Reddit, they really hate us. They really hate us on
Okay,
Reddit.
well, then why are you? This is there's only so much time.
Chris, I'm the sponge who will soak up all the negativity,
Yeah,
who will also
this is
shield you from the harmful outside world.
this
I'm like an
is
overbearing mother to you.
that's uncomfortable. I already have one of those, but well, dude, that's the question for my therapist. This Cavs team is really good. I think the rest of this season is going to be utterly fascinating. This is the most.
Can we
This
play a
is what.
fun game before the break? Go ahead and finish
Yeah,
that one.
no, hit me with the game. Let's go, and then we'll
So
go on a break.
we did a game last episode where we talked about Gary Harris, Eric Bledsoe, and Tristan Thompson. I
Yeah.
have 3 more names to float by you.
Okay, hit me.
So let's say Robin Lopez as the big. Let's say DJ Augustine as the point guard. And let's say DeAndre Bembry as like the wingish player. Rank those guys.
Bembry, Augustine, Lopez. It's not even a consideration.
I think I'd go Bembry, Lopez, Augustine, because in a playoff scenario, maybe you need an extra body to throw at Embiid or Giannis or something, and that's where Lopez could come in handy. Bembry, obviously, just an elite shooter in the corner. He can play 3-4. He's a bigger wing. Plays defense really well too. Like, I'm very surprised Brooklyn cut him at the end of the day. And like DJ Augustine, like again, I think he might become a little bit redundant if they use Karis LeVert as like that supercharged 6-man for them, and he acts as a bit of like a bigger point guard off the bench.
Yeah, I don't think that's wrong. I mostly just want Robin Lopez to continue to live his best Disney life, and
Bro,
that's
he and Sir Cece and Moondog would create some of the best bits for Cavs Social and like in arena videos.
pro wrestling vibes as Evan Mobley's looking over at him like James Harden looking at Kyrie lighting some sage.
Just
in
like
the
looking
locker
at him
room.
like
All right.
dead man, like what is this?
Yes. All right, so let's go to break. First up, we're going to tell you about our friends at Shopify. Shopify gives entrepreneurs the resources once reserved for big business, so upstarts, startups, and established businesses alike can sell everywhere, synchronize online and in-person sales, and effortlessly stay informed. Scaling your business is a journey of endless possibility. Reach customers online and across social networks with an ever-growing suite of channel integrations and apps, including Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and more. Gain insights as you grow with a detailed reporting of conversion rates, profit margins, and beyond. More than a store, Shopify grows with you. There is possibility powered by Shopify. Go to shopify.com/lockedinNBA. That is all lowercase, for a free 14-day trial and get full access to Shopify's entire suite of features. Grow your business with Shopify today. All you got to do is go to shopify.com/lockedonNBA right now. Shopify.com/lockedonnba. And of course, have to tell you about our friends at Built Bar. Look, Evan, this is the time of year where people give up on their New Year's resolutions, but this year it's the time to stick to them. You got to eat right, and you can do that with the help of Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because you're actually going to enjoy eating these Built Bars. They have puffs as well, and if you're missing out on the puffs, got to tell you, it's a mistake. It is the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy. I would hope so. They're marshmallows. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors. Yummy cinnamony churro, chocolate marshmallow, banana cream pie. All so good. These are going to be your new favorite. All Built Bars are covered in 100% chocolate. Yes, puffs included. 100% real chocolate. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Mint brownie, coconut, coconut almond, and new for this month, white chocolate cookies and cream. Those are some of the great flavors with new coming all the time. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. They put taste first, and they're the best tasting protein bars out there. Okay, Evan, this weekend, 2 Cavs games. Cavs Pacers, Cavs 76ers. Cavs just beat the Pacers. They should be sizable favorites again in that game. With Indiana not having Miles Turner, it'll be the home debut for Tyrese Halliburton and all of that, but they should be sizable favorites. The main event of the weekend is quite obviously Cavs 76ers on Saturday in Philly.
Yeah, it really is. It depends on whether or not James Harden is available. I imagine the trade will be finalized first thing tomorrow morning by the league office. I just didn't know if maybe like Philly or Brooklyn would try to rope it in the third team to kind of get some more leverage involved. But that's obviously the team or the game the Cavs need to keep their attention focused on. I'm interested how JB Bickerstaff manages Darius Garland's minutes against Indiana. Obviously, they have to beat the Pacers. They should remain focused on Indiana, but JB did say he's shooting for about 30-ish minutes a game for Darius. I wonder if the Cavs can kind of just clobber the Pacers early, especially because there's no Sabonis now. There's probably going to be no Turner. Like, yes, Halliburton will play. Yes, no Brogdon is questionable. I saw
that team should be in the much way like the Cavs were when they made some deals at the deadline last year and things were kind of going in a down direction. That team should be let's lose some games and try to get like Chet or Paolo. Like that's where that team should be at realistically.
Yeah, they absolutely should, but you never know. Any given night, something could happen. But I wonder if the Cavs can kind of just clobber the Pacers early. JB Bickerstaff doesn't do a JB Bickerstaff thing and play his starters in like the closing moments of the fourth quarter when they're up like 30 or something. Let's get Dylan Windler get a little bit of burn. Maybe Kevin Pangos can have his swan song before he gets waived and goes to Moscow to play basketball. Obviously, the focus is going to be against Philadelphia. It's the first time they played Philly this year. This game has a lot of significance in terms of playoff seeding, and also I think it's going to be like the first, like, especially if Harden's available, it's going to be the first litmus test for the Cavs on whether or not this team is legit enough to hang with the big dogs. Because, like, yeah, I know Philly hasn't had much success with yes, they've had success with the Joel Embiid as like the franchise cornerstone, but they haven't gone super duper far, obviously. But they're still one of the beasts of the East. Like, if especially now James Harden in the fold, and like there's a lot of interesting pieces. Like I said, they gave up Doc's son-in-law and Ben Simmons, and they didn't have to give up Tyrese Maxey, or they didn't have to give up Matisse Thybulle along the way. Like, I'm interested to see how Philly plays Cleveland, and more so how Cleveland holds up against Philly. Like, I don't want to put a bunch of expectations on this one because it could end up being like when the Bucks played the Cavs and Drew Holiday just kind of locked up Darius Garland for the entire game. But it's definitely going to be interesting to see how JB and his staff kind of tactically approach this and just kind of how they handle it.
Yeah, there will obviously be like a test case for like how Philly's going to play. Like we are going to be, we are going to see how this team is how Philly tries to play from day one with Harden, with Embiid, assuming Harden plays and everything, and then they are going to be the test case of how to defend them. I am going to be like really intrigued just to see like what the Cavs do in that regard, like and assuming LeVert still comes off that bench and things, like there's just like a lot of little wrinkles, and like
I think LeVert's going to come off the bench until after the All-Star break. I don't think they have enough a large enough sample size to say they should start him and bench Isaac.
I also think this will be one of those games where it's like I would keep this in mind that the Cavs could be a team and Philly could be a team that, like, let's say these teams play again the rest of the year. That these teams play in the playoffs. This game will like look one way, and I would almost suspect it looks a different way when they play again, just because these teams are both going to evolve. This first, Jackson Frank wrote a really good piece about this over time, but the first game of Harden and Embiid is not going to be the finished product, just like it is not the first matchup of the first version of LeVert is not the finished version of LeVert. Like there's still just a lot of moving parts here. That said, going to be fascinated to see how it goes. Very excited for this stretch of Cavs basketball. It's going to be really fun to cover. It's
They
really going to be
play
fun to cover.
Philly 3 times in a month.
Those 3 games will be things that I think that we should deeply dive into once we get there and see if these 2 teams are going to play, but they're going to be fascinating. I think just these 2 teams stylistically will play so differently in a lot of ways that I will just be fascinated to watch how they play. And
Tobias Harris is going to be a test for Evan Mobley. I feel like Evan Mobley's
yeah,
run up on him. That's going to be an interesting matchup too.
Yeah, I mean, Allen will get Embiid, Mobley will defend Harris, and you would think Okoro, the argument for starting Okoro, is, hey, we're gonna need someone to defend these guys for a large chunk of this game, that is.
Well, if it's Saturday, it's going to be probably Maxey if Harden doesn't play, and if Harden plays, it'll be Harden.
I mean, you could start. I think they start both of them realistically.
Harden, I'm saying you put Okoro will be on Maxey if Harden doesn't play.
Yeah.
If Harden doesn't play, you put Okoro on Harden.
Yeah, this will be really fun. I mean, I
It
cannot
is.
wait. I just can't. I just truly the thing I'm most excited for the rest of the year is just thinking about this team is realistically how the Cavs adjust as they go and figure stuff out, because I think you're starting to see, even with LeVert, there's just a little more in there kind of being done on offense. At least the defense kind of is what it is, and it's very effective. I kind of just want to see how JB tinkers as we go, and Saturday will be to some degree another version of that, just more LeVert. They had a couple of days off in between the game, but it's also the second night of a back-to-back, so there's just a lot of little stuff. This should be fun. Evan, any 3 games for the All-Star break? I just want to end on this. Is there any other move that could affect the East that we didn't talk about that you want to just shout out before we get out of here? We kind of hit them all, but is there anyone in particular you want to just highlight?
Boston one in particular, I really do think could shift things a little bit. I really like Derek White. He was a player I was hoping secretly, if they couldn't get Karis LeVert, that's who the Cavs zero in on. Very surprised San Antonio traded him for so little at the end of the day. I mean, the first round pick does help a little bit, but is it really worth it? But DeJounte Murray has a dramatically different team. Surprised Jakob Pearl didn't get traded by them. But I just wanted to say it's worth noting that Philly does play Oklahoma City the night before, so a little bit of play time, but it's going to be some rest.
This is the thing, man. Give me fewer NBA games. Give me less back-to-backs when you can avoid them, and maybe we'll get more of the regular season matchups instead of potentially having to worry that guys are going to be out or whatnot.
Yeah, and again, it's just theoretically speaking. This Nets team is so good on paper. In the half court, they're going to shred teams. I'm going to play Ben Simmons at the 5 if I'm Steve Nash and never look back.
Yeah, he's more of a hypothetical 5 than an actual 5 at this point, but I want to see it. There's a lot I just want to see. There's a lot I want to see.
There's a lot of exciting stuff. East basketball is better than West right now, that's for sure. The Lakers, big. Yeah.
Well, that's going to be it. There's a ton of great stuff going on in the Locked On Network right now. All the NBA shows are covering this. I'm watching. There's a clip on my Twitter feed from Radio Row where we have a setup on Radio Row. That's how big Locked On is, how far we've come. With Bo Brack talking to Jake Plummer, who has a nice long beard and had long hair. Just a whole vibe going on there with Jake Plummer talking about stuff. It's what a time for the Locked On Network. We're doing great. Check everything we're doing out. And if you want a great second listen, I'm going to tell you today, because it's Super Bowl, this Friday before the Super Bowl, Locked On Bengals. James Rapine, who was right about DeMar DeRozan way back in the day when he was on this show and in talking to him when he worked at 92.3, is doing great work over there. He's on site at Super Bowl. Check out Locked On Bengals. Get ready for the Burrow Sunday. Evan, who are you picking?
I'm going with the Bengals, baby. It's for my dad. He's a lifelong Bengals fan, been with them since the franchise is founded. And I want to say that if I get to see CJ Uzoma bathe in a bathtub of Skyline chili, I'll take that.
I'm riding with Joe Burrow, baby. Let's go.
Yeah, Joey Ice is so good. Real quick, Joe Burr. But did you see what the Cincinnati airport's serving right now?
If it has anything to do with the chili, that's the one thing I'm really out on.
It's the Cincy Teeny. It is
I'm not gonna get sick from this.
Part pure grain lager, part Gold Star chili, part oyster crackers, part cheese with a Bengals helmet and an olive and Pepto-Bismol served on the side.
I would just not. If you order that, God bless. Lord be with you. That's too much. All right. It's Locked On Cavs. Everyone have a great week. And we'll be back on Monday talking about Cavs Pacers, talking about Cavs 76ers, and what we learned from those games. Looking ahead to the All-Star break. Should be fun times. I'm Chris. That's Evan. Be well, be safe, and good
Bye.
vibes only. Don't bring your bad vibes.